And then you follow that up with that interview and you go, wait a second, that just destabilized everything I was thinking. And then you find out he killed himself and you're like, oh, well, I guess he did. And that's a nice boom, 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 you know, which I think is where I always want to keep an audience, especially at the beginning of a movie and at the end of a movie. I feel like there's a skit on an album I love. I think it's from a Nick Nolte movie, the skit. And, you know, this woman is asking Nick Nolte about, you know, her paintings. And it might be from North Dallas 40, about her paintings. And you know, if just wants Nick Nolte to tell her if she's any good. And he's like, it doesn't matter any good. It doesn't matter. Like, if you're an artist, it doesn't matter. You don't have a choice, you know? And that making that movie reminded me, like, yeah, I don't really have a choice. Like, I was depressed. I could say I was depressed because, you know, things didn't work out for me the way that I wanted them to, but I was really depressed because I wasn't making art, you know? And so when I made art, the depression was gone. I didn't care that I didn't have any money. I didn't care that, you know, things weren't working out for me. I was so happy that I made this thing. I'd seen it this way. It came out better than the way I'd seen it. And, you know, people reacted to it in all the myriad of ways I could have hoped. Like, it was why I realized why I do this, because I don't have a choice. One of the reasons why I got depressed after, you know, taking Newlyweds to Sundance and nothing happening for me was because it was made apparent to me in words. You know, I saw it in actions, but I literally had a sales agent because I couldn't get a sales agent for the movie after we got in. So it was really hard. And I had one sales agent. This man, he was Asian American. He was like, I really like this movie. I can't sell it. I can't represent you. He called me to tell me I like this movie and I can't represent you. And I was like, why not? And he was like, yeah, you have a bunch of Black actors and no one knows who they are. And I was like, but Sundance is a place full of movies with actors that no one knows who they are. And I thought the whole point was you go to Sundance and you get to see the movie and then you know who these people are and then you start putting them in stuff and helping them make the things they want to make.
Sure.
But that in 2013, that wasn't the case for Black films. That didn't happen until a year. It started, really, that 2013 was just the beginning, but like 14, 15, 16 is when you really saw, I mean, and that has to do with, honestly, Netflix recognizing, oh, everybody watches art, everybody watches movies. This is a way to Trojan horse a Fred Hampton biopic into an undercover crime drama. Like, it was always going to be a two-hander. And then, you know, with discovering the Eyes on the Prize interview, and, you know, how impactful that was in terms of, you know, the full scope of this story and the idea, you know, me having realization, hey, I can use that as a narrative device, because I hate exposition. You know, I can't stand it. If you need information, I'd rather just tell you and just move on. Let's get back to the drama. Here's the information real quick. Now let's get back to the drama, as opposed to like these long scenes that just exist to give you information and pretending that they're dramatic and they're not. You know, we can use this interview to just give us information. And for a while we were doing that. And then, you know, to Ryan and the studio's credit, but really Ryan hated the interviews as a, like, he didn't want us to really, he really at one point wanted them all gone. And I was like, I can't possibly see how that is a good idea. Like, I really thought it was important to have some of them, but he was like, okay, I think that right now these interviews are just as bad as exposition because they're serving no purpose other than giving us information and not telling us anything about Waymona's character. And I was like, you're right. And so then we did another pass editorially at just only using those interviews that actually gave you a little bit of insight into him. And now I think they're used appropriately. Feeling the guilt of O'Neill throughout the course of this movie, like you said, specifically in the third act, and then putting that interview right on the heels of that, and William O'Neill almost seemingly coming off carefree, you know, and there's an arrogance to his response and his energy in that response, where there was a moment when I remember the first time I watched it, I was like, oh fuck, like, will this work? Because there's such different emotions. Like the young O'Neill, you know, like played by Lakeith, taking that money and put in his pocket and being the most unhappy he's ever been, and the real O'Neill, all these years later in a suit, just like, yeah, I was just giving this crazy off the cuff answer. But then I was like, that's kind of dope, because it's you've been watching this person, trying to get a sense of, do I have a handle on who this person really is? Am I empathizing with this person fully? Do I understand how they feel about what they're doing? Questioning that. And there are times where you think you understand it while watching the movie, and there are times when you're like, I don't know if I do. And I think you get to that ending with the first ending where he gets the money, and you go, okay, I understand it. I do understand it. And then you follow that up with that interview, and you go, wait a second, that just destabilized everything I was thinking. And then you find out he killed himself, and you're like, oh, well, I guess he did. And that's a nice boom, 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 you know, which I think is where I always want to keep an audience, especially at the beginning of a movie and at the end of a movie. William O'Neill had committed suicide the day that Eyes on the Prize 2 aired on television. And I remember Will was looking at it on his computer, and I saw his face. And I was like, what happened? And he just told me, and I said, you're kidding me. You know, because we knew, we'd both done crazy amounts of research, thought we knew everything. And this is such a big piece of information that we didn't know. And so when I found that out, I was like, that's the end of the movie. Like that's like, and then, you know, you read the transcript of the interview, because I didn't actually see the actual interview until later, but you read the transcript of the interview, the William interview, and you see that question asked, and you see his response to that answer. And it's just like, oh man, like those two things, it's like the equivalent of like punching you in the face, and then as you're on your way down, like sweeping your leg, you know? And like, I loved that combo, the combo nature of it all, you know? And thank God we had Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. on set 90% of the time. Because as I mentioned to someone the other day, you know, somebody asked me like, did you feel a lot of pressure and nervousness, like adapting a true story like this? And I think I would have felt a lot more if I'd done it in a vacuum, without the presence and the input and the insight of the people who it matters to the most, you know, folks who lived through this and were directly impacted by it. But to have a representative of the organization on set with me every day, it was like, okay, we can have those conversations in real time and figure out points of interest, as opposed to me finishing the film and praying that I didn't get sued, or praying that there wasn't calls for a boycott. So it was just such an asset to have him take part. If you do your job and you cast your actors correctly, in some ways, the less rehearsal time, the better, because the interactions are alive. You don't have time for shit to get stale. And I like to just I like to rehearse to confirm for everyone, like, we're safe, but also to just like, for people to basically get a little excited, but not just excited, you know, not make any permanent decisions. Because to me, also, my favorite part of directing, or one of my favorite parts of directing, is being surprised and leaving space for surprise. For me to be surprised, for the actors to surprise each other, to surprise themselves, because that's the stuff that feels real. I know enough to, put forth what I think is a coherent vision, but I'm always, and I think, if you pick the right collaborators in terms of producers, in terms of the right studio, they know that, we're editing a movie and it's constantly changing. I mean, they have way more experience than I do in doing that. So they know, like, we're going to try stuff, we're going to watch it, we're going to see if it works, and if it doesn't work, like, I think that there's one of the sort of lies that's put forth is that, the director knows everything always, and they're responsible for everything you see. And it's just not true. We don't know everything always, and we're not responsible for everything you see. And people who make movies know that. So I never feel the pressure to, that's not to say it is your job to show up on set with a plan. It is your job to, when problems arise, to be able to solve those problems in a time frame that enables you to get the work done that you need to. But you also just should remember that in those instances you have help.